Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. Happy Tuesday and end of February for you.
It's the last day. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if we've ever recorded on the last day of February. I don't know.
It's possible. Yeah, in 6 years, it's possible that we've done it. But but last day of February and tomorrow, first day of March, and the Mandalorian returns.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever recorded on the 29th of February, though.
No, we haven't done a leap year.
Huh.
All right, that's goals, right? Goals.
Interesting. Granted, we've only had probably one opportunity to do so.
True. Right. But goals. All right, I'm gonna look on the calendar here to see when.
I should have stopped while I was ahead. Jesus, man. Man. So we kind of both had a busy weekend. We watched some things, some guilty pleasures, if you will. I, of course, not of course, but I put on Outer Banks season 3 before quote unquote spoilers. I don't know why I like the show. It's not even like I like it. It's just a good binge for me. Every now and then I need a good binge, and I need something that I can literally be doing anything and then look at the TV and know exactly what's going on. It's just good background noise. And I do like some of the relationships on the show. I will have to say, after watching the 3rd season in its entirety, 2nd season was better. 3rd season, it was clear that they really wanted to. I mean, the first 3 seasons, it's a pretty consistent story of adventure and treasure hunting that they're telling. And it's all connected. Events in this season relate back to the 1st season, which is good. But it was clear that the writers are like, okay, we don't know if this is going to get renewed for a 4th season. And we also just want to wrap this up because we literally can't stretch this anymore. So that's what we're going to do. But they do make the smart decision and have a good little, not tease even, but just a little hey, and if we get renewed, this is where we're headed for season 4. Cool. So I think that they made the right choice. I'm always surprised by how many people like the Outer Banks because, on my timeline, at least, I saw a lot of people already talking about it and some other reactions to it. So,
I think I want to say that I saw somewhere that what's that?
No, go ahead.
No, I think I saw somewhere that it was renewed for a 4th season.
Well, yeah.
Or maybe I'm thinking about another show on Netflix, but I thought that one was one, or maybe or am I thinking about You?
No, why do I feel like You is already in its 4th season?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure You is already in its 4th season.
Okay, so maybe it was this one. Yeah.
You had the original Lifetime season. You had the Love season. You had the Suburb season. Yeah, we're definitely in the 4th season.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, maybe. Well, I think the reason why I just think I maybe read it here in the local papers here because I guess the series is supposed to be based in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, even though seeing the locations, and it's hard, as I was joking with you in messages, how I just can't get past the locations not being like the real thing, which I get that, but that's just my hang up.
No worries. Like I told you, I wasn't going to go see Cocaine Bear.
Yeah.
You wanted to go see it because you like the 80s nostalgic action stuff, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I did do non-spoiler review for Cocaine Bear. So if you don't want to get spoiled here in a minute here, go check that out because I'm going to go into spoilers for the film itself. But yeah, this was Cocaine Bear whenever we were doing our things to look forward to in the first part of 2023, I think I added this one to it when I saw the trailers late last year. That it was just like, God, this looks so like, even though I don't typically go for the dark humor horror genre, I just, for whatever reason, this one just seemed very intriguing. So spoilers start now. And so the film is based off of a real story. There was a situation where, some drug smugglers did actually dispose of their contraband, over the forest. I believe it was in Georgia or Tennessee in real life. And a bear really did ingest it all. And that's where real life ends, and this movie picks up with some people in this national forest where the cocaine was dropped. Come across this coked out bear. And it was, I have to say, this film, as I said in my non-spoiler review, here in my spoiler review, this film knows what it is and knows what it's intending to do, and it succeeded. I did not go into this thing expecting to enjoy it. I was just like, I went to a matinee because I was like, it's only a couple bucks, instead of full price. But, I really, really enjoyed this film. So things sort of progress. You have there's the jump scare where the bear like gets the first hiker, and this couple were in the woods and they were like making all their wedding plans and stuff, and just like your typical 80s fare whenever things when things go south in these types of films. And then we get to our the leads. Carrie Russell plays a single mom in the film, and her daughter is skipping school with her best friend. And of course they're going to go see the waterfalls that Carrie Russell's character was supposed to take her daughter to, but she had a date to come up, and so she couldn't make it. So the friends go into the woods. They come across some of the cocaine. The kids, of course, they like intersperse the mid 1980s ads, like don't do drugs and stuff. This is your brain on drugs. Those things were like all sprinkled in the film. And, these kids like try to like eat the cocaine.
Gross.
And yeah, of course. And then the bear comes out. They run into the bear stash, and the bear like goes batshit crazy, because they, were messing with the stash. And, but things progress, and, there's a crazy park ranger who's like flirting with, one of the natural, resources guys that's out there, and they get, there's a whole subplot with them. There's a whole there. And then of course, Ray Liotta, the late Ray Liotta, was his last film. He plays the kingpin whose drugs were like tossed out of the plane. And so he sends his son, who's played by Alden Ehrenreich, who a lot of folks probably remember him from, obviously from Solo, and I think he was in a couple other films as well. And O'Shea Jackson Jr. They go to retrieve this stuff. And so, they run into some kids O'Shea Jackson Jr. runs into some kids in the, bathroom, and, beats them down because they were trying to they were all cooked. They found to cook themselves. And of course they were high. So it was just, things go on. I mean, at the end of the movie, right, the bear ends up, there's a bunch of jump scares, a lot of funny moments. The bear ends up, not dying. So they're definitely, and keeps his coke. So at the end of the day, they're definitely setting this thing up for future franchise. Cocaine Bear 2 coming your way soon. But, like I said, I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I actually, indulged in a little guilty pleasure and checked out the film.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad that you had fun.
Yeah, fun Saturday afternoon movie.
Yeah. Man, poor Ray Liotta. It's last movie. He went out with Cocaine Bear, and he was in Goodfellas, Karina, and a whole bunch of other good movies.
Yeah, well, he was actually pretty good in this too. I mean, he sold it out, and it's directed by Elizabeth. Yeah. And it's directed by Elizabeth Banks, and Lord and Miller were actually the producers. So that I know a lot of people were like down on Elizabeth Banks, especially after Charlie's Angels, but she did a really good job in this film, I thought.
Nice. So we're going to talk Picard, and I'm still kind of like, why does Will want to talk Picard with me so much? Because this show has clearly moved into a section where viewers who are not diehard Trek fans struggle. And it's not so much as like the plot is pretty simple in my mind, but any reference, there's a lot of, so I keep thinking about, having watched the first 2 episodes of season 3, I keep thinking about how since we started this show, the first season was the most, I think, independent season. It definitely had its tie-ins, especially later on as things began to unfold. But early on, it felt like a very fresh new story. I'm not saying that this one doesn't, but it just felt like, okay, if you haven't been a diehard Trek fan, but you have watched maybe a movie, maybe a show here and there, you kind of understand most of what's happening, and a lot of it's like not heavy in the lore. And then the second season, it started to drift a little. And then we have the third season, which it's pulling all the chips in. It's just like, no, this is going to be our last ride. We're going to do this, and we're going to have all of the Easter eggs, all of the little details that diehard Trek fans are going to love. I got none of it. I did listen to the Geek Buddies review. They explained stuff. I still don't really understand half of it, but, yeah, I feel like you like when I disappoint you. I don't know. I know you love this franchise.
Yeah. Well, I part of the reason, and I think I want to talk to you about it. One, because I do love the franchise, and I know, I did do a episode 1 review to kick us off, but I will admit that there are some things that it will hit harder for fans of the Star Trek universe than say a casual viewer, like you said, the person who, you watched a movie or two, you may have come across the next generation or any one of the shows, as you're surfing, or if you're, have family members who like Star Trek, and you just, was sort of on the background and stuff. So I definitely get that.
Yeah. Which, speak about Rafi. Okay.
Yeah. Let's get it through the episodes. Yeah.
Do they ever know what to do with her? Because I've watched her now. Was she in? I think she was in season 1. I don't know. She just seems like her story has always throughout this show. I'm not talking about the whole entire lore, but just this show always seems to me like the most like removed from what's going on with Picard. It's kind of like they want to make a Raffi show, but she's not that compelling, in my opinion. So they just kind of sneak her story in and mask it as Picard's show. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm still trying to figure out what it is that bothers me about it. But it just seems like by the end of the second season, she seemed very happy. And then we meet her in this season, and it's like, okay, how much time has gone by? Where are we? What what is happening with these characters? But
Yeah.
and particularly her. But
yeah, I agree. So Rafi was a new character that was introduced in this series. So she did not have any. She was not in the Next Generation when it was in its original 7-year run on TV, nor any of the movies. So when we first meet her in season 1, yeah, she is definitely, in her dark place, because they reference, and to your point, with this third season, her history of drug abuse looms over everything that is going on with her storyline. When we first see her in the first episode, she is on Metalis Prime. It wasn't clear if she was like undercover or if she's fallen off the wagon, especially whenever she was in the entertainment district there when she was talking to the Orion, the green skin guy, and trying to find information about this super weapon.
Yeah, maybe that's what just bothers me about her character, is that I feel like we're repeating the same beats that we did with the first season with her.
Mm-hmm.
And the second season was kind of like, let's push those aside. But now we're back to where we started.
Yeah, I would agree. The second season in particular, both Rafi and Seven, it was like it seemed that they were having a very hard time to fit them into the overall arc of season 2.
Okay. So it's 7. Because I looked it up on IMDb because I'm like, I'm pretty sure her name is 7, but for some reason I'm like, is it 9? And I looked it up on IMDb and they lied to me.
It's 7 of 9. So that was her Borg designation.
Yeah, it didn't say 7 of 9 on IMDb. It said 9.
Well, IMDb is wrong.
Freaking IMDb, you're good for nothing. Yeah. How? It is cool. Well, I don't know if I would say it's cool, but I do like this whole setup with Picard and Legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because as much as I liked the first season, it really didn't feel like Picard's show. This season, I think we are like really getting that, whether it be his final farewell or not,
Yeah. I know. Jonathan Frakes, who plays Riker, he they've teased like, oh well, even though this may be the end of this series, we may see, and even Terry Matalas, the showrunner, has put it out there, thoughts like, well, we may see these characters in other iterations of Trek. So, but you're right though. It is sort of setting up like this is Picard's final run. It's clearly Jean-Luc's final run.
And the more I think about the first 2 episodes, it's when they have that conversation about Legacy, that little tease, it kind of splits into 2 different forms of it. Like you have your achievements with your career and your success, especially for someone like Picard, who his job has been his life for so long.
Right.
And he's pushed family aside. And so at the same time, you also are confronted with, oh, I have a son I didn't know about.
Yeah.
And what does that mean? And how do I deal with that? Especially because I'm a person, I can be a renegade because I don't have that emotional, like there's not somebody who I know is depending on me. It's very easy to be a renegade and not have family bonds.
Right.
But I also, if this really is like the farewell, they might kill him by the end of the season.
Kill Jack or Picard?
Picard.
I was thinking, and this is where
he's going to sacrifice himself for his son. That's my prediction right now.
That's sort of the inverse of what happened with Kirk and his son, because one of the things whenever we were first starting to discuss the show, and to your point about lore, this show really leans heavily in the trilogy of films, Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 with the original crew.
Right.
And in Star Trek 2, there was the similar themes that Kirk was dealing with when he was celebrating his 52nd birthday, where he was facing whereas Picard, in this series is like, I don't need a legacy. Kirk was having that midlife crisis himself as far as like, what is my legacy? I'm now in a desk job. I'm Admiral Kirk. Like, now we have Admiral Picard. There's so many like similarities that have been sort of set up with this series and past episodes. And one of the things that in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Kirk also learns that he has a son, David Marcus. And David in Star Trek 3 actually sacrifices himself when the Klingons are trying to, when they were trying to kill Spock, who had been reanimated on the Genesis planet. That was what created at the end of Star Trek 2, which was the Genesis device that Khan was after. And so, to your point, maybe that is where they're going here. They'll do the inverse, where Picard will, instead of Picard's son dying, and maybe Picard himself, trying to save Jack from Vadic, or potentially Lore, who is Data's brother.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I don't know. When I was listening to the Geek Buddies talk about it, and what you're saying about all of the ties, what they're doing to kind of put a twist on those movies, it seems like the smart choice. Well, not smart choice. It seems like the logical choice. And if Picard lives and his son dies, I will be a bit mad, because I don't like it when you introduce people just to kill them, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know we haven't talked about Last of Us, and they do that pretty much every episode. I get that. I totally understand that. But we're talking a full season. A man who Will's been watching forever. Probably as long as I've been alive. And you're gonna finally give him a son, only and it wouldn't fit the theme of legacy.
Yeah.
If their intention is really to show both sides of legacy and have it kind of collide for Picard this season, then him sacrificing himself for his son makes more sense than his son sacrificing the other word, especially because Jack is introduced to us as this con man, as this person who, are you playing us or are you for real? Here's your track record. You're clearly wanted by the Federation. Granted, Federation seems to be playing everybody right now.
Yeah.
But so
yeah. Another thought. Yeah, and another thought too is thinking about, as we were discussing, who may or may not sacrifice themselves, and and again, going to another theme from those films, and it really permeates throughout Star Trek, is this whole notion of the good to the many outweighs the needs of the few or the one, or the good, and that push pull, the converse of that. Whenever J.J. Abrams reboot The Wrath of Khan and his Star Trek series, he kind of flipped the script, where, spoiler alert if you haven't seen that film, fast forward to this part, but at the end of Star Trek 2, Spock sacrifices himself to save the Enterprise and the crew from when the Genesis device blew up inside the Reliant, the ship that Khan hijacked. In the JJ film, it was Kirk who sacrifices himself to do that.
Not
So, maybe I don't know.
Don't say it. Well, they better not pull some J.J. Abrams bullshit in this.
Well, and that's where my concern is. Like, if they flip the script and do the Picard, John Luke sacrificing himself for everything, then that's the JJ story treatment. And I don't know.
No. In JJ, Kirk still lived.
Right. But then, yeah. And, and the thing is, I'm glad you brought that up, because Picard's already been reanimated once, because, at the end of season 1, and even Vadic references that in the second episode.
Yep.
With the, so they've played that card with John Luke. So I can't,
1900 lives. So if they're gonna do it, they better do it. I am still when the moment you said, and then the sacrifice, I was like, that was not a sacrifice. That was like, oh, we're gonna do this, but not really, because we want to make another movie. Yeah. Oh my God, that movie pissed me off so much, and I'm sure a lot of people, but still.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So if this is, but to your point about legacy and other things, I mean, that and the themes that they're picking up in this series, that is a very plausible outcome, that this time we will lose John Luke for good this time.
Yeah. I mean, I do know that there's a theory that Raffi could be the one who sacrificed, but so here's the thing, okay? Yeah. In this episode, or in the second episode, she's confronted, or she meets up with her ex, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And her ex gives her a choice: the job, like 2 favors, the job, or you can see your son, and she chooses the job. So if she sacrifices herself, and it's not to save her son, but it's to save everyone else, the character has never really, in my opinion, the character has never really overcome seeing the bigger picture. She clearly has always wanted to be a mom, but between whether it be the drugs or the job, because she has a clear addiction to the job as well, as much as the drugs were a problem.
Yeah.
It's like when we see her in the first episode, she has, she's been clean, but she still has these tendencies, even in her body movement, of you're an addict of something. You're acting very obsessive right now. And that's what I think, what he sees, and why he gives that choice. And so I don't feel which is arguably the wrong choice. Yeah. And I don't feel if she sacrifices herself, then that thread has come to a good conclusion in terms of character growth.
Yeah, I heard that. I've seen some of that theory out there as well. And to me, for all the things you just said, I agree. And also, I just don't feel like it will be earned.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just, I mean, it just, at least when Data, for example, sacrificed himself at the end of Star Trek Nemesis, and then he had, his real death, his final death, at the end of season 1 in Picard. Those things all felt earned to me. I mean, and especially his second, when he really did die for good. That was the appropriate arc for that character. But I don't feel like this for Raffi. Yeah, she may end up sacrificing herself, but I don't see that being the thing that's going to close the series out. I mean, it may be a death that happens, but not the death that's going to at the end of the day, be the consequential one that's going to, save the universe.
Right. Damn it. The universe needs saving again.
Yeah.
What else? Is Beverly the Red Lady?
No. So the Red Lady, in the first episode was, Captain Rachel Garrett, who was the commander of the Enterprise C, the ship that was the immediate predecessor to John Luke's first Enterprise. Okay. So so it was just, I think it was a target. Yeah, it was just a target. That's
Okay.
all it was. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a target at that recruiting station on Metalis Prime, and then and then and I will say, and I mentioned this in my episode 1 review, and then my gut and many other people's guts were confirmed with this. Whenever her contact, that she was trying to arrange a face to face with, I mean, and again, this is to your point about how when we started, how, to non-Star Trek fans, or people who haven't followed the series as close, you wouldn't pick up on these kind of things, but I did immediately. I was like, oh, that's Worf. I mean, I remember sitting there with my wife. I was like, we were watching. I was like, oh, I think that's Worf. And sure enough, it ended up being him whenever he rescued her, from Sneed, the Ferengi, at the end of episode 2.
Right.
Yeah. So, your point is very well taken that, some things that happen in this show, if you haven't followed Star Trek closely, it may seem new and like, oh, wow, that's a pretty good story twist. For for other fans, it's like, I mean, I still enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. And I like the way that they're using, instead of just like having everybody show up at once and then we're just going off on this grand adventure. I'm liking how they're reintroducing all the characters. And one of the things that really, when Picard was with Jack and the brig and they had the interrogation scene, when Shaw was giving Picard a chance to, give him a reason to, not turn Jack over. Where they were discussing how, Jean-Luc seems to be living in the past, but, look around, everyone else is like moved on with their lives. And, I thought that was a really, especially like, for example, Beverly, Picard was like, Beverly would never do this and think it's like, really? You haven't talked to her in 20 years. Do you really know the people that you worked with all those years ago when you haven't seen them? And so, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how things sort of unwind with that. Like, for example, we saw Deanna and Will in season 2. Was it season 2? Yeah. On Picard, they were together on their, retired and all. And, now we find out that they're estranged. Their marriage broke up or at least they're estranged right now. And, learning what caused their marriage to like go sideways. Those are some of the things that I'm sure, we'll get as the season progresses. So I'm really liking how they're doing that in the series. And then, before we close out the review, I just gotta like talk about Captain Shaw. And, I wasn't sure about that character, at first, but I'm really liking what they're doing with him. He could easily, they could easily made it a one-dimensional, I'm just going to follow the rules by the book kind of Starfleet captain that we've seen in other shows and stuff. But, there's definitely some layers and nuances to that character, especially as he, whenever he was deliberating whether or not to turn Jack over, but then Picard, like, when Beverly shows up on the bridge and they have that moment and Beverly and Picard have that moment and he finally admits after Riker's been like all episode, like, Jean-Luc, just can't you see it? Just go ahead and admit it. But, Shaw recognized the situation, was okay with Jean-Luc taking command of the ship, and then following on with Picard's direction, took the ship into the nebula, which, again, was a good tactic given that they were tactically, had no chance against the Shrike, Vadic ship. And so, so I think we're seeing, even though he may be a by the books kind of guy or whatever, he also recognizes that, there are some times when, even though he may grumble about it, these guys are right. And, I've got to take these actions to save my ship and crew. So those are some things about that. And then Vatic, of course. What did you think about her?
Oh, I honestly, I mean, between her and Shaw, to me, they both seem very caricatures that I've seen before. Like I wasn't that impressed by either one of them. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. I think, again, my fanboy them was like, oh yeah, I've seen her father, Christopher Plummer. She was channeling Kang, but also I think the thing that what I liked about Vatic was she did her homework, because she referenced, as we talked about earlier, she referenced Picard's synth body, but also the fact that Shaw, there was some issues in his psychological profile, that she was trying to she knows some things that it seems like he was broken at some point, or something that's in his background that she was going to try to exploit in the situation. So and it threw him, and I liked the fact, whenever she brought that up, it definitely like threw him off for a minute during that scene. So those were some of the other things that I really liked about the the second episode. So, but yeah, there was, for me as a fan, this was for the 3 seasons of Picard, at least so far, this is what I was hoping we would have gotten the last 2 seasons as a whole. I mean, and both the previous 2 seasons did start out pretty strong, as we both talked, as we when we reviewed them, and then they hit some rocky middle places. So I'm hoping that they, third time's the charm, and they won't have that happen this time.
Yeah, well, we will see. All right. So that brings us to Last of Us Left Behind episode. Will, what did you think about this episode?
So I like this I like the episode. I mean, it was a good episode. Wasn't my favorite. Didn't, for whatever reason, I watched it twice to make sure I wasn't like dead. My initial dead inside reaction wasn't just a aberration, but that's how I really felt. And while I really enjoyed it, it didn't hit me from as hard as, say, Frank and Bill, or Henry and Sam. I don't know if it's just they just already wrung all the emotions out of me, and I just I can't cry anymore.
You got 2 episodes left to test that theory.
Yeah, exactly. But it was. I felt like it was. I did feel like, oh man, this really sucks, as far as their story, and both Storm Reed and Bella just killed it. I mean, the acting and everything was just on point. But yeah, I just didn't have the same emotional response as I did with the other two like gut punch episodes, or even like Pedro's whenever he was in in episode 6, with some of the things that going through, especially the scene with Ellie and Joel when they had that moment where he was like, I can't take you anymore. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I'm kind of the same. I know that retrospectively, whether it be a month from now, a week from now, looking back on this season, this episode will rank lower for me than some of the other ones. And I mean, to your point, it's like, okay, I love chocolate. Now rank your favorite chocolate. Well, I like them all. So you're telling me, of the best show right now, you're gonna put this one as like the weakest episode? Maybe there's a few, I think 1 or 2 others that might be below it, but I think in terms of looking at this from a season perspective, it makes sense, the placement of it. I don't think you could have told this story from Ellie's past in any other place. I personally would hate it. And I will say that what they're leading to, without giving spoilers away, did feel very awkward when I was watching people play the game or listening to them discuss it. It's a very weird thing because, I mean, we're going from Joel being like stabbed. That was a stab wound, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So I think into this very dire situation, and then you're still there in that house. I did like the aspect of the horse being inside. I don't know. That was cute.
Yeah. It was.
and then you're taken to this past and you, like, maybe what should have happened is I think they drug out the 5 or the 7 wonders of the wall of the mall a little bit too much, where I was like, okay, get there. And then, and I know they didn't do this in the game either, not The Last of Us, but the Left Behind game, but they don't, there's not that closure we're used to. There's the hint at it. I mean, they've been hinting at it for a while now about what happens. And so maybe that's why it didn't hit as much, because despite the tragedies that we've seen others have happen, it's still closure. It still is like, okay, we know, moving on to the next chapter. And I go back and forth by thinking that is a really smart thing to do, especially at this point in the season where, again, you run the risk always of, are you doing the same thing over and over and over again? Are you putting a new spin on it? And so in a way, I think that was a smart choice not to do, especially if they didn't do it in the game. Because the people who have played the game now aren't getting their closure either. But I mean, it's hard to even say that when, like, a lot of the signs are pointing towards Ellie ends up shooting her. And that's the first life she took. And to have that be someone she was in love with, someone she relied on, much like Joel, like, it's hard in the moment. I'm like, oh my God, just get there. And then they get there and I'm like, okay, thank God. Let's go to the next episode. I have to wait a week. But then when I sit down and think about it from a structured narrative, it makes sense. It makes sense. Maybe it's also because there just wasn't enough Pedro. Okay. We came from an episode where the man had people bawling their eyes out just because he was sitting on a stool talking to his brother.
He was like Performer of the Week last week from TV launch.
and I'm not, and again, this is not about comparing like the performances from Storm and Bella, because it has nothing to do with them. It has something more about the pacing of the episode and just that ability that in past episodes where you have really been hit by a gut and it hit in the gut, and it's not necessarily, last week's episode proved it doesn't have to be because someone died.
Right. That's the thing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It can be because of the circumstance and the situation, and them making it very clear that the fear isn't just about becoming an infected. It's like there's bigger fears that these characters are dealing with. Yeah. And you know what? When you sent me a message the other night after watching it, you sent me a message today saying, yesterday saying there was a very interesting factoid in the Left Behind podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or Last of Us podcast after show,
Yeah.
with Troy Baker. But, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll listen to that because my routine is to listen to that before we record. And I had already written my notes, like the rundown notes. And I put in there, like, why the heck does this feel like a Stranger Things episode?
Yeah, I saw that in your notes. And honestly, when I was watching it Sunday night, I'm glad you put that there. That was Sunday night when I watched it for the first time.
Right.
That was my vibe.
Yeah.
Honestly. That was my honest to God vibe. Whenever I saw you, when I opened up the notes yesterday and I saw you had that there, I was like, okay, we're like meeting channeling each other here.
Yeah, definitely. We're definitely on the same journey with this show together.
Yeah, for real.
And I think it's because Stranger Things has this ultra nostalgia vibe. And then, especially in the 4th season where you had that, what was his name?
Oh,
I feel like it started with a V, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was what's her name's brother? Oh gosh, I can't remember his name, but yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had this like demon underlord creature, who would come and hunt down these children, and I'm pretty sure like in season 3, one of the big climaxes occurred in a mall.
It happened in a mall, yeah.
Yeah. So especially when they took that, like, these two are having fun, no one's around. Oh wait, we're gonna go and oh look, there is an infected. There's one. That moment when they revealed the infected felt so Stranger Things. So I thought, when I was going to listen to the podcast, they were going to say, yeah, we use the same set from Stranger. But no, they said something different. So what did they say?
Yeah. So they were wanting to shoot them all because again, just to give context, the episode was it was a nostalgia trip. And I think that was part of the motivation. They were trying to find them all. They found a space, but it was a 1 level and it did have a small escalator. So they basically like used that. And then, so it was a mix of practical effect where they built part of the mall on the sound stage. And then the scene when Riley flicks the lights is actually VFX. But that's when I got honestly, whenever she flicked the lights on, that's when I got the Stranger Things vibe. When I saw the entire mall from the 2nd floor, during the episode. And and that's when I first got it. And from that point forward, I had the feelings like you had where it seemed it did seem that they were padding things. And not necessarily in a bad way, because there were some important like moments that happened. Like, for example, the awkwardness of, when they went to the Victoria's Secret and it reinforced the awkward teenage love that both have for each other. And for whatever reason they can't express it because, another thing too, you have to remember the context of, this, what it was like, so
it's the early 2000s.
Early
like
2000s.
Yeah. It's a different, it's a different time when, being gay was less acceptable than
that's acceptable. Exactly. There's that. There's, and also like, there were other like, when they were in the photo booth and they were like, talking about screenshots. So there were like things like that like were nice little bits, but yeah.
I know. I was just going to say that, I've been talking about this since day one. Like, the interesting thing about Ellie, and especially in terms of the show versus the game, is you're more able to get, your mind wrapped around the fact that this is a girl who was born into this world post-outbreak day.
Mm-hmm.
And so they in this episode, you see it because you not only have her, you have Riley. So
Mm-hmm.
now you have two kids who are in a mall. Like I grew up in Alaska. I know a little bit about what it's like to go in a mall. Granted, I have to like fly, but whatever. Anyway, so a mall, and then it's allowing the writers to play with this idea of making the viewers feel nostalgic for a certain time, and to really get across like young love, adolescence, while at the same time, like, just when you think, oh, this is like any show featuring two teenage girls, no, this is still Last of Us.
Right.
So they don't know what a screenshot is. They don't know why. And I mean, they've sprinkled that in, especially throughout the season with Ellie, as I think it was last week's episode where she reads that diary and is like, this is what all of the girls like were obsessed about. All of the, like, it's a different world. And so in a way, and maybe that's also why it gave off that Stranger Things vibe, is because you again have this like time capsule where you feel like these characters, what they're going through, are very relatable. But then at the same time, it's warped in this fantasy horror situation that comes out at just the right time. Yeah, so I think it's more interesting to talk about this episode than it actually was to go watch it, just because I still think I'm going to hold fast on, I don't think it was paced perfectly. I think there could have been some stuff shortened a bit. I think the writers got a bit too lost. And by writers, I mean writer, because this is the only episode where Neil Druckmann, the creator of the game and showrunner, wrote by himself.
Yeah. I would agree, as it could have been tightened up a bit in that respect. I think, because I remember when I was watching it the first time, and even when I rewatched it, I was like, they were just, the things were just going just a bit long, and you know, it was like product placement for Mortal Kombat. I mean,
hey, well, I was listening to Kind of Funny talk about this episode, and they made a good point. It's clear Neil loves video games and comic books and all of that, to the point where the references were more about the time and less about brands, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. And I know it's a practical matter. I know it was just, that was one of the things they talked about, was the reason why it was Mortal Kombat instead of the other, another, I guess the one they had actual game was, some licensing issues, because I mean, they're owned by Warner. So.
Right.
Yeah. But I think you're right about the Kind of Funny people. I think that, that not about so much the brands, but I think maybe that's what it was. I felt like, and maybe that's why emotionally I just felt like in a different place, because it was more about the things that were going on instead of the people.
Interesting.
So maybe I got too wrapped up in the nostalgia to the point where it took me away from like the emotional like story that they were telling about Ellie and Riley, and what eventually what ended up happening at the end at the end, where they were both bitten by the infected.
Well, and it also might have been distracting from the more show-based or the more real their real world conversation about the difference between Fedra and the Fireflies. I mean, these are two young girls who are having a conversation about the government versus the rebel. Like a very intense conversation, and it's similar to something maybe you would see Tommy and Joel talk about, like the pros and cons of that. Or it's just interesting, but I think it did get lost in as you're more focused on the environment and that feeling of they're finally in a quote unquote safe place, or in a place where they can like be kids. And yet they're talking about their kids in a mall, talking about bombing other people, and it's just very, it's sad in a way that it gets lost a bit when you're actually watching it. But no, you make a good point with that.
Yeah, and I mean, because I mean I'm glad you brought up about the discussion about Fedra and the Fireflies, because again that's been a theme, even at the beginning of the episode, when Ellie was with the captain, and
she was being threatened to be put in the hole again.
Or
not even threatened. She's like, "Where is it?"
Where is? Put me in it. I'm ready. I can do another day or two in there.
There anyway.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it was just like these. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because something that I think gets a little muddled, or a little lost, was this. They present them as the same, and then the Firefly thing comes up, and suddenly they're different. But they're different even before that.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the line of dialogue, but there's a very brief line that Riley has that says, "You don't know what it's like to have parents."
Right.
So, and that's what makes her want to choose the Fireflies over Fedra. And meanwhile, Ellie's, in her mind, she's like, "I just spoke to the captain. He gave me 2 life choices. I ain't got nothing, and I don't want to be shoved in shit." So this is more of a promise, while the Fireflies, I don't know what world they're trying to save, because I don't understand it. Like, I understand this one. So it's
and
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, and I was gonna say, I think that's a good point. I mean, because that they really do. I mean, Ellie, this is the comfort. The Fireflies, it is, Fedra, the whole propaganda conversation and stuff going back and forth, they both like threw it back at each other. And, I think it is very disconcerting. Ellie can't, conceive of a world that's not structured this way, because this is what she's, this is what, what she's used to. And Fedra is also like, even though we know the crazy things the bad things that they've done, the captain's like making the point, if we go down, everything goes down.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And now, it did start to pick up the moment they get scratched, and then they go through, or Riley goes through the options.
Yeah.
And then they fade to black, and you immediately snap back to present day, and you realize like the whole correlation with no, I'm going to stay and fight. I don't know if I can save him. I don't know if I'm just going to lose another person in my arms, but I'm going to do what Riley wanted to do and stay and fight, enjoy every moment I can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what she chooses to do. And so I like that.
I did too.
Maybe if they had cut back and forth a little bit more, because honestly, by that point, I was also like, "Oh yeah, this is how it started." Oh my God.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely crescendoed. Yeah. And you know what really pisses me off? And we've
What's
had
that?
this discussion before. People work on your thumbnails. I don't watch previews for next week. I don't. But I already know Troy Baker's going to be in next week's episode, and I'm pissed off about it. And I've been very tempted to people do not tell me who he's playing, because I have an idea in my mind.
Mm.
And so I'm curious, but I'm also because it's a story I already know. I'm like, I'm preserving as much surprise as I can.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm sure our listeners who've never played the game are thanking you right now as well.
Yeah. Well, like, I'm doing this selfishly. I'm like, I wonder if he's playing this one or this one. That'd be interesting. And depending on what happens, we'll see. But yeah, which by the way, like, when the ban on, well, I don't know. We're going to have to talk about this when you can listen to the Kind of Funny reviews, because they do spoil stuff that happens in season 2. Which, we didn't talk about this at the start of our news show, but it was announced this week that Succession is ending with season 4.
Mm-hmm.
And
I,
as heartbroken as I am, I'm also looking at this from, well, you're going to go out on top. Okay. You're not going to beat the story to death. And for all of you people who are watching Last of Us, there's only going to be 2 seasons.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad this is a good segue too, just as we start to wind down here with Mandalorian, and talk about runs and stuff. And, of course, the season does start tomorrow, and a question was presented to Jon Favreau. Have you, he revealed that he has already written the next season of the show. But then the follow up is, well, when do you think this thing may end? And he was like, I don't have an end in sight.
Because Will forced me to watch Book of Boba Fett. If you haven't watched it, go back and listen to our episodes where especially when we discussed the last episode and maybe the episode before. Okay.
The last 3 episodes.
Three episodes. Yeah. I think it's
go listen to our reviews on that. And Mando 2.5. So go check it out. Yeah.
Because y'all, if I had to watch it, you at least have to listen to me talk about it. All right. Will, on that note, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at Scene and Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.